The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. April 1, 2015. Chapter 55, Temple of the Inner Self. There wasn't much time before those sandstorms hit us, so I ordered Arya and Sonata to get out of the way. They jumped to one side and I jumped to the other, as there was no way to defeat this with the way it was coming at us. The knight who caused this to happen in the meantime continued creating sandstorms by slamming its axe down, and it wasn't showing any signs of stopping. Spike knows what we're up against, but because he can't see very much in front of us, he couldn't provide a description. As we continued to avoid the sandstorms which were coming our way, it was becoming quite evident that we were getting tired, yet the knight looked as though it wasn't even exhausted, which struck me as odd. Knights may be sturdy, but even they aren't able to maintain an attack for very long, as their armor weight and lack of ventilation can tire them out if they overdo it.
"You know, this is starting to get ridiculous,"
moaned Arya.
"What other choice do we have other than avoiding all of those sandstorms?"
I asked.
"I'm not about to stand here and let myself get pummeled by some swirling sand caused by a guy wearing armor. We've come all this way that going back now isn't an option. Besides, kid, you need to get through if you plan on helping out the Gerudo. You're capable of using magic, aren't you? Then how about you use some of that hocus pocus, and do something about this?"
asked Arya.
"My magic is useless here," I replied. "Are you kidding me?"
asked Arya.
"I wish that I was, but because of the darkness that covers the haunted wasteland, only basic magic can be used here. Any other kind would just fizzle out, or not even work at all,"
I replied. Deep down, I was feeling just as frustrated as she was, yet I was perhaps feeling it even more so given that I'm restricted in what I can do. None of my weapons are going to be able to reach the knight, and using magic in this eternal sandstorm isn't possible. As the knight produced more sandstorms which we avoided, there was something I noticed, and that it wasn't even attempting to move forward to attack us. All it was doing was slamming its axe into the ground, and creating storms which were slowing us down. Surely, if it was a monster like Spike claims, it would be coming closer to us, and it did have legs, so walking was something it was able to do. Looking at the Phantom Guide, it seemed itching to carry on with its intended task, and how could I blame it for wanting to go back to where it rests?
"You know, I've been thinking about this situation. That's going to do us nothing, for we're sitting ducks,"
moaned Arya.
"Why hasn't this knight decided to attack us when we're clearly at its mercy?"
I asked.
"Because it wants to stay where it is to prevent us from getting closer to the Colossus? I don't know. Look, kid, we need some kind of plan to get this thing out of our way, as we're getting really tired from avoiding sandstorm after sandstorm. While I'm able to keep going for as long as possible, Sonata is barely able to hold on as her bag is weighing her down,"
replied Arya.
"This monster is trying to keep us from getting to our destination," I announced. "You think it's some kind of creature?"
asked Arya.
"It must be, as why would a knight want to be out here in a desert? Their armor is so heavy that they will sink into the sand, yet this guy is clearly managing to stay on the surface without any trouble,"
I replied.
"So what are you getting at?"
asked Arya.
"I say, instead of us being attacked by sandstorms and playing a defensive strategy, we should continue moving forward in the hopes of getting to it. If we get close enough to it, I'll be able to defeat it using the weapons in my possession," I replied. You want us to move forward in a reckless charge in the hopes of attacking a knight whose armor is impervious? Ha! Ha ha ha! I never pegged you as wanting to do something like this, kid, and for that I've got to give you a great deal of respect. You know, if I were running around Hyrule Field right now in one of my marathons, you would be the perfect opponent for me,"
said Arya. I was glad that I lived up to her expectations, but maybe she was taking all of this too seriously. And yet, it sounds like she has found her inspiration, which is the reason she came with me. I tried talking to the Phantom Guide hoping that it would understand that we were going to keep moving, but my words fell on deaf ears, which felt disheartening. Either it wasn't able to understand my language, or it just simply refused to want to speak. That's when I decided to use my arms and hands to get its attention, which succeeded, and it observed me pointing towards where the knight was standing. It nodded its head in approval, and proceeded with carrying on, guiding us to our destination.
"The guide is moving again, so we need to follow it before it leaves us behind," I said. "Way to think on your feet, kid, by using those gestures to get its attention," said Arya. It ignored my words, so I figured on using my hands and arms. Of course, it did mean having to embarrass myself, as I had to act like I was desperate just to get it to even notice.
I sighed.
"You heroic types often have to resort to such actions as it's part of your job,"
laughed Arya.
"What do you mean by job?"
I asked.
"Being someone who goes around defeating monsters and saving the world does count as a profession in Hyrule. While people pay you for your services with unusual rewards, you never complain about it because you appreciate what you get. If someone else were to get the same reward, they would complain as they expect gold or something just as valuable,"
replied Arya.
"I'd call it along the lines of being forced to work,"
I mumbled to myself.
"Hey? What was that?"
asked Arya.
"Nothing. I was merely saying something to myself,"
I said. If this was an actual job, I would be happy because I'm experiencing something truly unique, which I haven't done since leaving Equestria long ago. But, since I was forced to become the hero of time due to destiny, I feel like this is more of a chore than anything. I know that I've gotten used to doing all of this heroic work, yet I still somehow manage to find something to complain about. It also sounded like Arya was slightly jealous of me, but I'm probably misreading the situation. The Phantom Guide meanwhile continued changing directions, and even heading backwards at one point, but it eventually began to move forward. Ahead of us were the cliffs which lead to the Desert Colossus, and blocking the way was the night. As the phantom disappeared upon reaching its intended destination, I turned off the lens of truth as I no longer needed to use it.
"Are you able to see what this monster is?" "I'm still having some trouble given the sandstorm is limiting my vision, but I suspect that this is an iron knuckle,"
replied Spike.
"It sounds like a fighter with that name," I said. Iron Knuckle is known as the Living Armor, an automated killing machine whose sole purpose is to defend. It just stands still like a statue, making people assume it's some kind of decoration, but the moment you touch it, it comes to life and attacks. The axe that it wields is powerful, not to mention massive, and if it connects, then you will feel like a part of your life force was taken away. While it does move slow because armor that heavy doesn't give it much in the way of mobility, it can take a lot of punishment, which makes it almost impossible to defeat," said Spike. "Then this must be one of the more dangerous monsters," I said. "More like it is exactly that, for Iron Knuckle strikes fear into even other monsters, so they choose to keep their distance. I'm still surprised that it's out here in the desert, as this would be the last place one of them would be." That heavy armor should have made it sink down into the sand, so why hasn't it gone and done that? Could there be more than what we're looking at?
Asked Spike. I had no answer for him as this was the first time I've ever heard of an iron knuckle, and judging from his description, this creature is immensely strong. That's when it turned to face us, for it had spent a couple of minutes looking the other way as though someone were giving it a command from a distance. It lifted up its axe, and slammed it into the ground, causing another sandstorm to appear. Since we were closer than the previous attacks thrown at us, we had no chance of avoiding this storm. We soon found ourselves spinning around in the twister of sand before we were dropped to the ground, where the iron knuckle gripped its weapon with both hands.
Is everyone okay?
I asked.
I'm fine, kid, and so is Sonata, even though her head is currently stuck in the sand,
replied Arya.
I wonder why the iron knuckle has stopped attacking us with sandstorms?
I asked.
There's no need for you to ask any pointless questions, for now it's just standing there waiting for you to attack it. Go over there, and destroy it, because isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Neither Sonata or I can fight it as we're not warriors, and we lack the kind of experience that you have,
replied Arya.
Maybe it wishes to talk,
I suggested.
You think so?
Asked Arya.
Perhaps, but it's different to say if it's even capable of speech. In either case, this is what we'll do. Arya, I want you to take Sonata and enter the Desert Colossus, and I'll keep this thing distracted for as long as possible until I'm able to join you,
I replied.
There's that crazy attitude of yours again, which has become quite an inspiration, but are you sure this thing is going to allow us to just walk on by? I get the feeling it doesn't want us past, as though it were protecting something beyond the haunted wasteland. I know your idea is pretty good, but I think we'll stick with you. Why would we want to abandon a friend who is willing to risk their own life? We would be pretty lousy friends if we decided to up and abandon you,
said Arya. That was a pretty beautiful speech, and I need to believe in my own convictions where I feel the iron knuckle wishes to speak. Should I initiate the conversation? If I say the wrong thing, then it will only get worse, so maybe I should just walk forward instead? I decided to go with my gut, which was telling me that walking forward would work, so I took a single step forward, prompting the iron knuckle to say something in return.
Do not move, so you can talk,
I asked.
Go back where you came from. I'm sorry, but I can't do that,
I said.
Then you wish to defy the ones who gave me life. Those two witches need to be stopped because they have committed so many atrocities, but I doubt that a heartless monster such as yourself would even understand. If you believe you can prevent me from breaking the curse on the Spirit Temple, then you will be disappointed, as I'm not going to allow you or your mistresses to stop me,
I replied.
Do you wish to die? Your threats don't scare me,
I replied.
Deeply noted, heroic one, but by choosing not to go back to where you come from, you have signaled your death knell. I was created to stop the one who is deemed as being a great threat, and that has been designated as being you. The only threat in this world is Ganondorf and his two surrogate mothers,
I said.
Will you continue to resist? I'll never rest until the temple and this part of Hyrule have been restored to normal,
I replied.
If you wish to die, my creators shall fulfill your wishes. You may continue onward, heroic one, but know that nothing will save you from the fury which awaits you within the Temple of the Sand.
The iron knuckle then disappeared by stepping backwards until I could no longer see it, yet its threats were ones I chose to take seriously. Those witches want me dead because I'm the only one who can ruin the plans of their son, so I need to survive against everything they throw my way. With the way now clear, it meant that the desert colossus was now accessible, yet before being able to do anything, someone decided to make an announcement which I was expecting to happen.
"Guess this is where we part ways," began Arya. "I had a feeling you were going to say that,"
I said.
"Even though I intended on traveling to the Colossus, I no longer need to because I have the inspiration I was looking for. You were the one who has inspired me, Sunset Shimmer, and for that you've got my eternal gratitude and friendship. Now I'm anxiously awaiting for people like you to challenge me to a race across Hyrule Field and beyond. If you succeed in returning peace to the kingdom, people will look to you as a hero, and aspire to become the same. They in turn would want to race me because I can easily bring out their inner spirit,"
said Arya.
"Are you sure you want to go back?"
I asked.
"If I go in a different direction, I'll end up at the Garudoa's fortress. I desire to head back to the tent where Muto and the carpenters are, as I've been traveling with them since they left Kakariko village. I'm never going to forget what you've shown me, kid, and with that I must take my leave of you. See ya,"
said Arya. She then turned around and started to run off in a random direction before she vanished because of the sandstorm limiting my vision. Sonata in the meantime was urging me to keep going, for her reasons for coming haven't been fulfilled. Now that the Iron Knuckle has moved out of the way, nothing was going to stop us from entering the Desert Colossus. As we resumed walking, I had a feeling that someone was watching me by using a powerful magic.
"It looks like the girl was able to make it through the haunted wasteland. I'm surprised our loyal minion failed to kill her, but I suppose this isn't a complete loss. We have seen some of what this child is capable of, so now we can prepare ourselves accordingly. While it would have been preferable to have witnessed all of her abilities, it doesn't matter because she doesn't stand a chance against us and our powerful magic. Do not underestimate the girl, my sister, for she has proven herself to be quite strong, especially in dangerous situations. Yes, all of those traps and monsters within the other temples should have killed her with ease, and yet she was able to overcome all of them through a combination of skill, power, and most of all, luck. That is why our temple must be reinforced with what she has already faced, but in much greater numbers than ever before. The great Ganondorf believes we can kill her, and so we must not fail him, otherwise we would be cast aside without mercy. Even though he questioned our magical prowess, and even ridiculed us for failing to keep Spitfire under control, we will still carry out his wishes because the situation has fallen onto us to resolve. I would have loved nothing more than to have punished the Gerudo for choosing to defy us, but he insisted that we leave them alone. We can ignore them, for they are no threat to us anyway. You're right, for this girl is the one we must focus on. So what shall we use to ensure her death? There are so many ways to kill the child, for she is limited with what she can do. All of those weapons in her possession are useless, yet the Master's sword is going to be a concern, especially if she has figured out how to use it properly. Even her magic is pitiful chrysalis despite the fact that she is able to use different elements, but in the end she will fall to us, and the power deep inside of her body will belong to the great Ganondorf. How many times have I told not to call by that horrid name? I don't know why you insist on referring to me as Chrysalis when my name is clearly Kotake. Now we're even, sister, because you have a tendency to call me Trixie. Okay, I'll admit that I've been wrong to call you that, but I haven't the slightest idea as to why I do. It feels like memories from another world are compelling me, but the chances of there being other worlds beyond this one are preposterous. Anyway, my sister, we must take another thing into consideration regarding this girl, and that is her ability to transform, where she acquires the ears and tail of a pony. Why, that creature makes no sense, but we must be careful, for she has no control of her actions upon changing. She becomes a sadistic being who relies on anger to defeat monsters who proved to be far stronger,"
said Chrysalis.
"Yet it's been some time since she last used it,"
said Trixie.
"It is because she refuses to allow herself to lose control,"
said Chrysalis.
"Then we need not worry about this other form, but then it's possible she will be able to gain control, and change on her own. It seems we need to watch her closely as she explores our temple, for we must ensure of her death so that the great Ganondorf's reign remains unchanged." "Ha! I just remembered something very important which I completely forgot about,"
said Trixie.
"What is that?"
asked Chrysalis.
"The girl doesn't possess the power of silver, so she can't progress through our temple period. All she can do is merely explore the main entrance, and nothing more, which means she will never be able to break the curse,"
replied Trixie.
"Remember that she is able to travel back and forth through time, for she is known as the hero of time. Therefore, it is possible for her to acquire the power by going into the past. We do not possess the ability to manipulate time, so we're powerless to prevent such an occurrence from happening, yet I believe she will struggle regardless,"
said Chrysalis.
"Then we must prepare ourselves,"
began Trixie.
"Do you suspect that we will have to do battle with her?"
asked Chrysalis.
"If she manages to make it far enough, then we will have no other choice but to fight. The only thing that we need to fear is the sacred treasure which lies within the temple, for that can be used against us. I still can't believe that Nibiru was able to steal the ring which allows the Chosen One to claim that relic, and if the girl was able to claim it from her, we need to triple our efforts, it seems,"
replied Trixie.
"We are the last line, for if we fall then the great Ganondorf's castle will be threatened. I have no doubt that when the last sage is awakened, they will use their power to allow her access. This one must not be allowed to awaken, so we will do that is necessary to kill both of them. As for this other one our son mentioned, he knows when she is said to appear, so he can deal with that,"
said Chrysalis. The moment Sonata and I stepped into the desert colossus, the sandstorm which had been limiting our vision finally disappeared, and we could finally see further ahead of us. That's when my jaw dropped upon discovering that this place was huge in size. It was even bigger than the Garudoa's fortress, so I had a lot of ground to cover. At the far end was the mountain which Spitfire mentioned, and the desert goddess stood out because of how detailed it was. The entrance to the temple was at the base of the goddess, so I had to walk across a large expanse to make it.
"You appear to be overwhelmed with what you see,"
said Sonata.
"I never imagined this place would be so big,"
I said.
"They don't call it the Desert Colossus for nothing, my young friend, but yes, this area is quite large despite the fact that very few have ever made it here. I heard that long ago, it was possible to come here because the haunted wasteland never existed, yet over time the cursed sands appeared. We have achieved what only Nibiru has done by reaching this place, so we should be celebrating this fact with some digging,"
said Sonata.
"I've been meaning to ask you something,"
I said.
"What kind of question?"
asked Sonata.
"How do you figure that there are masks buried out here?"
I asked.
I've been visiting the Garudoa's fortress for a few years now, yet I am not an honorary member like you and Arya are. You might be thinking, why haven't they thrown me into their dungeons, and the answer is, because I have a special permission due to selling them my masks. Yes, they enjoy it whenever I come to visit, for I always bring them new selections of masks. As a result of my business, I learned plenty of information regarding their tribe's history, and that includes their ancestors' use of tribal masks. They told me that their ancestors buried such masks under the sand, and don't care if I take them because they abandoned their past when they decided to go with thievery,"
replied Sonata.
"When did you learn about the masks being buried here?"
I asked.
"About 3 years ago,"
replied Sonata.
"Then why haven't you gotten them yet?"
I asked.
"Even though I knew where they were, I had no means of reaching the desert colossus. While you did see me perform an unusual stunt where I jumped across the river made out of sand, I can't see the phantom guide due to not being able to see the truth. It probably means that I'll need new eyes or something in the future. Anyway, I would merely be wasting my time if I came here, and couldn't get to where I needed to go. The surprising thing is that I had no idea you were in the area, for I assumed that both Muto and Arya had been talking about you as though they were wondering what you've been doing,"
replied Sonata.
"So what do you plan on doing now?"
I asked.
"My aim is to dig around here for as long as possible until I can find those masks. Luckily, the Garudo have told me exactly where to dig, so it won't take me very long to get what I came for. I'm not worried that they may have tricked me because they would never try to do that to someone who has been selling them masks. Knowing me, I am going to be digging for quite some time, so this isn't some kind of final farewell sunset shimmer. I'm sure you'll be seeing me again shortly once you've finished with the Great Fairy. If you want to find the entrance to her fountain, try over there by that eastern wall. As for me, I'm heading towards where those stones are stacked in front of the goddess,"
replied Sonata.
"Be careful of the monsters," I said. "I'm sure they will avoid me as I'm not a threat, but you on the other hand are going to be hounded by them,"
replied Sonata. She then walked off without a care in the world, and sure enough no levers popped up to attack her. I smacked myself on the forehead because once again I'm just dumbfounded by how this girl behaves in any kind of situation. She is a lot like Pinkie Pie in the human world, but not as zany, which I'm glad for this world may not be able to handle two of them. No matter what she experiences, she always has a positive outlook. Before moving towards the fairy fountain, and being shocked wondering how she knew exactly where to go, I decided to take another look at my surroundings. I have to admit that this place was quite overwhelming, yet things looked too peaceful for their own good due to the lack of dark clouds. No wonder no one ever came here, as they never suspected a problem.
"What do you make of this desert spike?"
I asked.
"It certainly is a daunting task given how big it is, and I recommend you keep the hover boots on at all times so long as you remain on the sand. If you walk on the sand wearing your regular boots, you'll sink down a little, and it will slow you down. The levers do exist around here, and they will have an easier time of hitting you if your feet are below the surface. Also, there are some gways flying around which makes me wonder why it took us so long to encounter them,"
replied Spike.
"What are they?"
I asked.
"Gways are flying birds that soar above the sky minding their own business, but when they spot any prey on the ground, they will dive down until they succeed in colliding with them. They are pretty persistent with their pursuit until you either move far enough away prompting them to ignore you, or you end up defeating them. It takes just one strike to bring one down, so only attack them if they are trying to dive bomb you. If enough are defeated, then a larger one will appear which will drop many rupees if you bring it down, but right now you should focus on the Great Fairy,"
replied Spike.
"I still can't believe Sonata knows where she is,"
I said.
"Perhaps she saw something on the eastern wall which we can't see,"
suggested Spike.
"Only way to find out is to go over there,"
I said. As soon as I began to walk forward, levers started popping out of the ground, and attempted to run into me because I ignored all of them as I wanted to get to the fountain where I was going to see a dojo for the first time in a very long while. When I reached the eastern wall, it quickly became obvious as to how Sonata figured it out. There was a crack in the wall which clearly looked out of place, so I knew what needed to be done, and that was to use an explosive to reveal the way. I took the bomb bag from my belt and placed it on the ground where I proceeded to pull a bomb out from it, and then I tossed it at the wall where it detonated, exposing the entrance. Walking into the cave, I found myself in front of the fountain, and on the floor was the crest of the royal family which I haven't seen since the Temple of Time.
Even now, that crest still looks stunning. Makes me wish that I could have done more to prevent this world from falling apart. Now what has brought this on?"
asked Spike.
"If I had defeated Ganondorf 7 years ago, none of this would have happened,"
I replied.
"While you were strong back then, Sunset Shimmer, even with your transformation, the evil king was stronger as he had more experience. Granted, you held your own better than most against him considering he was deemed the strongest man in Hyrule, so you shouldn't beat yourself up over it,"
said Spike.
"I know, but I still relive that moment over and over in my head,"
I said.
"Because it's something which you want to rectify, and it will only happen when Ganondorf is defeated,"
said Spike.
"Makes me wish I had controlled my transformation better," I said. "You'll finally get that chance when we enter the Spirit Temple, as it's the best place for you to use it,"
said Spike. That made me feel a little better, so I proceeded to take the Ocarina of Time from my pouch, and played Twilight's lullaby which summoned the Great Fairy. To be honest, for a moment, I still couldn't get over the fact that a dojo was the leader of the fairies.
"Welcome, Sunset Shimmer. I am the third and final Great Fairy of Magic. I knew you would make it through the haunted wasteland, but then you are the chosen hero whose destiny it is to save this world. Before I give you the power which I possess, there are things you need to know regarding this desert. I trust that this is acceptable?"
asked a dojo. This certainly was different, as the other versions of her gave me their gift first, and then told me what was going on. It sounded like the situation in the desert is so severe that she wants to discuss it with me right away. I nodded my head in approval of what she wanted, and a dojo proceeded to explain with perhaps the most obvious thing.
"Before you entered the Desert Colossus, you were attacked by an armored foe, correct?" "Yes, what you witnessed was a monster who had been summoned to kill you." Spike here said that it was something called an iron knuckle,
I said.
"My loyal subject has never steered you wrong, and this trend continues even now, for what he told you was indeed correct. You must be careful of this one child, for it possesses a secret which could change the fate of this land forever. The ones who reside in the temple at the far end of the Colossus created this monster, for they are desperate because of how close you are to achieving your goal. With only one sage remaining to be awakened, you are going to be facing perhaps the strongest evil you have seen thus far. Of course, this was to be expected given how you have been breaking the curses on the temples. Do not underestimate those who raised the evil king, for their magic is far greater than yours,"
said a dojo.
"Is there a way for me to defeat them?"
I asked.
Only with the ultimate defense can you hope to succeed,
replied Adajo. There was the mentioning of this defensive weapon again, which had me wondering just what it was. Everyone who has said something about it have only been giving me subtle hints without really giving me a solid description, but perhaps they don't know just what it is given that it hasn't been seen for centuries.
Do you know what happened to a woman named Neburu?
I asked.
Before your arrival here, she was the only one who was able to cross the haunted wasteland, yet her fate has been masked with darkness. I am unable to tell you what happened to her, yet perhaps you can uncover the answer if you were to come here at a much earlier time. The events of the past can dictate the future, and guide those who wish to learn what the real truth is,
replied Adajo. Even though her words were confusing, she was hinting to go back to the past, and see what happened to Rainbow Dash. Again, I needed Cheek's help as only her song will allow me to return here as my younger self. I then noticed that the Great Fairy appeared to have a glum expression on her face as though she were about to say something dreadful, and I hope that isn't going to be the case.
There is something else that you need to know, Sunset Shimmer, and it is not the best of news. I was afraid of that,
I sighed.
The demonic one that is connected to you awaits within the Spirit Temple,
said Adajo.
Gasp! Sunset Demon! In all of this excitement of making it here, I'd completely forgotten about her,
I said.
She must be overcome if you are to succeed in awakening the final wise one, but she will not make it easy for you. The demon has acquired a new power which must be matched with a power of your own, or else you shall be destroyed. The evil king won't be interfering in the eventual battle, and those who raised him will not get involved either, so you and the demonic one will be able to finally resolve the issue which has always existed between you,
said Adajo. I gathered from her words that I would need to transform in order to battle against the she-demon, but I still haven't been able to maintain any kind of control when I change. I need to figure out something before it's too late, as I don't want to do something I'll live to regret if the transformation is forced onto me.
Is there anything else you can tell me?
I asked.
No, for the one who speaks to you through her special song will answer your additional concerns. Seek out her guidance, and you will learn what awaits you within the temple. I will now grant you the spell which you came all this way to claim,
replied Adajo. As she held out her arms, a blue light began to appear, but I was disappointed in that she wasn't going to tell me anything else. Fluttershy should provide the remaining answers to my questions, so I need to speak with her before entering the temple. The blue light then enveloped my body before changing into a gem just like the other two magic spells, and I watched as it slowly dropped down into my hands.
This is Nehru's love, which can create a powerful magical barrier which shall protect you from any and all attacks, yet before you decide to run outside and see what it can do, allow me to explain just how this spell works. I wasn't planning on doing that, you know,
I moaned.
This spell is powerful defensive magic, and while you will still get hit, you shall sustain no damage to your health. Not even the strongest of physical and magical blows will cause you injury, but do not allow yourself to grow lazy and content with walking around inside of a protective shield. This spell will only last you for 2 minutes before the barrier starts to weaken and fade away. Also, while you are surrounded by the barrier, you cannot use any other kind of magic, and that does include your own. As such, this magic should be used only when you absolutely need to. Also, know that Nehru's love costs the most in terms of magic power, so if you are low on using magic, then you cannot use the spell,
said Adajo.
I wish that I could have gotten this much sooner,
I said.
If you had, then you never would have learned so much had you merely used a defensive spell. While I would agree that you could have used this magic sooner, know that you have proven that you can overcome any challenge no matter how difficult it may seem. Use this spell wisely, Sunset Shimmer, and know that whenever battle has made you weary, please come back to see me," said Adagio. With that, she returned to her altar, leaving me to ponder over the information she had provided me. I knew Sunset Demon was still on the loose, but I never knew where she planned on attacking me next until I realized that the place where my spirit would be tested was the Spirit Temple itself. As for this Nehru's love, I was going to use it, but I needed to use it at the right time, as I'd rather not be accused of taking the easy way out. When I stepped back outside, the sun was starting to lower, so it meant that I had taken hours just getting here, but I couldn't stop for a rest as I needed to keep going and enter the temple. Running forward and avoiding all of the levers which came out of the sand, I reached the stones Sonata told me about, and she was digging behind it using her hands, which made her look like she were a scrounger. "Looks like I'm surprising you for once," I said. "Perhaps, but then I was aware of your approach given that everyone else here is a monster," said Sonata. "And you didn't even scream," I said. "Why would I do that? I'm someone who doesn't get startled very easily, which is one of your quirks, Sunset Shimmer, but then you do have other quirks which make you strong. I have no doubt you will figure out what you need to do in that temple over there, so you should explore it and see what it has to offer. As for me, I do believe I'm on the verge of digging up one of those ancient masks. This is no doubt going to be a revolutionary discovery in mask history, and I am the one who is going to be uncovering something great," said Sonata. "Do you plan on staying here all night?" I asked. "I'll remain here until I have uncovered all of the masks that are buried here. Or at least a good majority of them," replied Sonata. "I could give you a hand if you want," I suggested. "While I do appreciate the offer, my young friend, your destiny guides you towards saving the world, so you must do what you came here for. No need to worry about me, as I know exactly what I'm doing. It will take me about a week to find of all of the masks, but the length of this venture is going to be worth it. I guess this is where I say my final farewell, unless we meet each other one last time. I hope that you still have the Mask of Truth, because that mask may prove useful to you. Perhaps not in this world, but maybe in one similar to this yet different," said Sonata. She then waved goodbye and resumed her digging, and as I left her, I walked up to the temple entrance, and looked up to see how tall this goddess of the sand really was. "I don't know about you, Spike, but it's certainly rather intimidating," I said. "Of the temples located in Hyrule, this is the one that has the least amount of information known about it," said Spike. "Is it because few have ever made it here?" I asked. "Perhaps, but it might be because the Gerudo never recorded much in the way of their ancestry, given how they chose to distance themselves from their past. I suppose asking Saria may give us some ideas, yet she and the forest spirits may not be able to give us more than what we already know," replied Spike. "All we can do is hope she can pull through, and tell us something," I said. This was going to be a crucial conversation, as there was little that I knew of this temple, and I would prefer to go in with some idea of what I was facing. I took the Ocarina of Time out from my pouch, and spent a few moments looking at it, wondering what might have happened had I not been chosen to become the hero of time. Upon concluding that I wouldn't know what could potentially happen in an alternative world, and choosing to not allow myself to think in such a manner, I played Fluttershy's song. "Sunset Shimmer? This is Fluttershy. Can you hear me? Miss Impa surprised us as to how much she knew about being a sage. It's as though she had been prepared for her destiny, and the rest of us had to learn straight away without any kind of planning. Anyway, you only have one more sage to awaken, and that means you will soon be able to take on Ganondorf,"
said Fluttershy.
"I have this feeling that awakening the final sage isn't going to be easy,"
I said.
"Judging from the howling winds flowing about, you must have made it to the far end of the desert,"
said Fluttershy.
"I'm actually standing in front of the entrance to the spirit temple," I said. "The forest spirits have been telling me all kinds of things regarding this temple, and perhaps the most important piece of information has to do with sunlight. There are going to be a lot of puzzles you need to solve which involve manipulating sunlight, yet you'll be finding different variations. You will need to use some unusual switches at first, but then you'll be using something a little bigger before using the smallest means to make your way through. Monsters from across your journey have all gathered here, yet there are some new creatures you haven't seen. One of them appears to have a specific weakness, and the spirits say it has to do with your element. As for the other one, it appears in just the one room, although several of it exist,"
said Fluttershy.
"Guess those two witches don't want me to break the curse," I said.
"Puzzles that require me to use sunlight to solve them." It sounded like I was going to have to do a lot of pushing, so I hope that I have the strength to move whatever needs moving. It also reaffirmed that the sacred treasure inside of the temple does involve using the sunlight, which is what Spitfire mentioned when she told me about it. The ring Derpy gave me long ago will allow me to gain access to the treasure, but only Rainbow Dash will know how I'm supposed to do that. Why else would she have stolen this item specifically? Then I had the idea of asking about the ring, for surely the forest spirits know what I need it for.
"Fluttershy, do you know anything about a ring which used to be in the temple? Someone did steal such an item from there years ago, and it's unfortunate that it happened because that ring will allow the Chosen One to be able to open the way to where the most sacred treasure of the Gerudo was sealed away,"
replied Fluttershy.
"I happen to have it in my hands," I said. "Really? If anyone were to be holding it, I'm glad that it's you,"
said Fluttershy.
Neighboru handed it over to her subordinate Derpy, and was commanded to give the ring to me because I'm the chosen one who must claim the ultimate defense. I haven't figured out what that is, so it looks like I need to ask her about it when I go back in time," I said. "Yes, you must travel into the past if you wish to know the fate of that woman. When you enter, you will soon discover that much is blocked off, preventing any kind of exploration. Time travel is really going to become essential for you to break the curse, yet how are you supposed to come back to the desert in the past?"
asked Fluttershy.
"I've got an idea in mind," I replied. "Then I hope it will work, otherwise you're going to be stuck in the desert. Oh, and the forest spirits are telling me that you will need to convince this Neighboru to change her current course of action. You already know what they are talking about as you acquired such knowledge from a man living in the haunted wasteland,"
said Fluttershy. Indeed I did, for Fancy Pants told me that she purchased an item of great evil which she was going to use in order to save the Gerudo. Yet, she isn't aware of the consequences that are bound to happen should she go through with her plan, so I need to talk with her, and get that item out of her possession. If I convince Rainbow Dash to give it to me, I'll make sure her people are saved in the correct manner, and not by acting like Ganondorf.
Sunset Shimmer, you are going to be tested in ways which you have never experienced before, and you must overcome them if you are to save the desert. Good luck, and make sure to talk to me when you go back in time, as my past self may be able to share some information with you."
That was a rather strange thing she said, and it sounded like another time paradox. I also noticed that Fluttershy didn't say anything about the she-demon, but I suspect my other self is hiding from her vision, which may explain why she didn't say anything.
Fluttershy definitely gave me a lot to think about regarding the spirit temple, I said. Even though she didn't mention Sunset Demon,
said Spike.
That's something we'll figure out on our own, but in the meantime we now know what we need to manipulate to solve the puzzles that await us, and the ring is needed to reach the treasure. Apart from that, we just have to endure past monsters and defeat those 2 witches if we're to save the Gerudo,
I said.
Shall we go in?
asked Spike.
We still haven't seen Sheik, and we need her song which will allow us to come back here in the past,
I replied.
I don't know why she hasn't appeared, but we need to go inside and get things started,
said Spike.
Guess you're right,
I sighed. Feeling dejected about not seeing Sheik, I proceeded to walk into the spirit temple where I found myself in a pretty room that had a carpet leading up some steps, but the snake head statues to my left and right caught my attention, and I'm guessing they aren't just here for show. I could also see some smaller statues in the area at the top of the steps, and to the right was a large block like the one I encountered inside of the Gerudo's training ground. Everything felt eerie despite how beautiful it looked, but I can't allow my insecurities to get in the way, otherwise I'm doomed before I even start. Noticing some jars on the ground, I walked towards them hoping they contained something, and suddenly they began to rise up off the ground before slamming into me as hard as possible.
Oh! Why did that happen? Looks like some of these jars have been enchanted with magic causing them to attack you,
replied Spike.
That's never happened before, I said. It must be the work of the witches,
said Spike. If this was their way of trying to intimidate me with their magic, then they need to do a better job. Still, those jars hurt as they are made of clay, and that means I need to be careful of just about anything. The snake head statues then caught my attention again, as I could have sworn their eyes suddenly glowed, so I walked over to the one on my left, and discovered there was some kind of writing on it.
I wonder what it says,
I asked.
This is written in the ancient language of the Hylia, which existed long before what we now call modern speech, yet I can read it for you, for fairies still utilize the old language. If you want to proceed in the past, you should return here with the pure heart of a child. That must have something to do with going back in time, and coming here when you're younger,
replied Spike.
Then what does the other one say?
I asked.
I'll tell when you walk over there,
replied Spike. I followed his advice, and went over to the other snake head statue.
This is also written in Hylia, so allow me to read it for you. If you want to travel in the future, you should return here with the power of silver from the past. This one has to do with you collecting something of silver from back then, and bringing it here. What do you suppose this power is?
I asked.
Spitfire did mention powerful gauntlets that used to be here, so that could be what this statue is referencing,
replied Spike. Aside from these messages being cryptic, it wasn't going to solve the immediate problem of how to proceed. Walking back to the stairs and going up them to reach the slightly upper landing, I threw a fireball at one of the statues out of sheer frustration. All of a sudden, it came to life where it started to hop around in the hopes of hitting me, but I used my magic again to hit it where it bounced around even faster before exploding, and leaving behind some bombs.
I wasn't expecting that to happen. That was an Armos which pretends to be a statue, but touching it will cause it to come alive, and attempt to run into you. After a while, it will head back to where it started, and resume the form of being a lifeless statue. Any kind of attack will damage an Armos, but when it is defeated, it will try to get close to you before exploding in a suicide attempt. Usually, it drops bombs after blowing up, so they are a good source in case you're running out. If you don't know if a statue is an Armos or not, you can attack it from a safe distance. If nothing happens, then it's an ordinary statue which you can push and pull around like a block, but if the opposite is true, then use whatever you think works best to defeat it," said Spike.
"Sorry for causing a scene," I sighed.
"You were feeling disappointed because of what those snake-head statues said, but remember that Saria did say that we can't proceed very far because the pathways have been blocked off," said Spike. He was right, as Fluttershy did say that, and looking to my right, I could see that large stone block a lot better, and no doubt it was much too heavy for me to push it anywhere. On the opposite side was a crawl spaces which can only fit a small child, yet despite still being the same now as I was then, Spike said that my heavy equipment prevents me from crawling through. I then could hear something coming from the other side, and I got down onto my knees to see if I could hear it better. "What is that sound?"
I asked.
"That's an ancient trap spinning around in the room beyond this crawl space, and the flapping sound which only now just started to happen is that of several keys. Of course, this doesn't mean all that much, Sunset Shimmer, given that we can't go through this narrow passage, and the giant block prevents us from going in the other direction," replied Spike. "So there is nothing we can do?"
I asked.
"I'm afraid so," replied Spike. "Then we have to leave the temple," I said. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" asked Spike. "What other choice is there? We can't proceed any further, so all we have for an option is leave, and try to find Sheik. We need a warp song to come back here in the past, so we need to find her as soon as possible. To be honest, I don't even know where to begin, as we end up running into her without knowing it. Maybe she is back at the Garudoa's fortress, or perhaps she was hiding in the haunted wasteland," I replied. This was going to be a very long search, because who knows where she could be, but I sighed knowing that I had to do this, and I left the temple. As I walked outside, the sun was just starting to go down for the night, yet I sensed something was amiss. Suddenly, I heard a familiar whooshing sound, but coming from up high, and Sheik appeared, catching me off guard. She must have jumped from those stones to reach me down here, yet I'm amazed she didn't suffer any kind of injury. Also, I suspect Sonata may have decided to go to sleep for the night, for I doubt she would be willing to continue digging in the darkness of the night. Past, present, future. The Master Sword is a ship with which you can sail upstream and downstream through Time's river. The port for that ship is in the Temple of Time, and you must go there as soon as you are able. No doubt that you have figured out that you need to travel back into the past and to learn what became of the one who wished to save her people," said Twilight. "You know of Neburu?" I asked. "My people, the Sheikah, kept a close watch over the Garudo, for we believed that they could not be trusted. She was the one exception to this, as we soon learned that she was different from the rest of her tribe. Neburu was a woman who possessed honor in her heart, and acted heroically, much in the same vein as you, Sunset Shimmer. However, this was merely nothing more than a mask she wore to keep her true intentions hidden from even those who trusted her the most," replied Twilight. "She purchased some kind of evil item years ago," I said. "In the past, she was filled with anger over how her people were being manipulated by their own king, yet she kept this to herself out of fear that they would be punished were they to have joined her cause. Upon being exiled, she decided to enact her dangerous plan of destroying the ones who are the source of the problems her people have endured for years. However, her anger has blinded her to the truth, and so what she believed was a righteous act ended up dooming this region, all because she could not fathom the consequences,
said Twilight.
I never knew that she had so much inner anger,
I said.
Time can cause emotions to fester for so long that they lose all sense of self. Nibiru allowed the ravages of time which afflicted her people to drive her to extreme actions. Those who raised the evil king knew what she was planning, and were prepared to deal with her accordingly. Judging from your expression, you desire to go back into the past to help her before it's too late? You must know that her fate and that of this land rests with you,
said Twilight. An idea then popped into my head, and I was certain Sheik would have an answer. Since Applejack knows that Twilight is alive somewhere, perhaps a fellow Sheikah would be able to clarify on that. Of course, I'll need to refer to Twilight by the name she goes by in this world, as I don't think Sheik knows the truth as to where I'm really from.
I heard Princess Zelda is alive somewhere in Hyrule, and I got this information from your leader,
I said.
Gasp. Then know that you may find out where she has been all this time upon awakening the final sage,
said Twilight. That was strange when she suddenly gasped like that, as though I had touched some kind of personal nerve, and the quickness of her response to what I said made me suspect Sheik knew a lot more than appearances suggest, so I tried to get some more answers from her.
There is no time to be concerned with the fate of the Hylian princess, for you must focus on what must be done here. To restore the desert colossus and enter the spirit temple, you must travel back through time's flow. Listen to this requiem of spirit. This melody will lead a child back to the desert.
Sheik then took out her golden harp once more, and started to play 6 notes which sounded rather beautiful. After playing the notes for a second time, she turned things over to me where I played it perfectly, thus learning the requiem of spirit. As I finished playing it, I could see a familiar character flying across the sky, and it had been years since I last saw him. Flash Sentry was still watching over me.
So what do you know about the princess?
I asked.
There is nothing that I have been told about her, so I am sorry for not being able to answer your question. Again, you may find out for yourself when the final sage has heard the awakening call from the sacred realm. Sunset Shimmer, you must stop Nibiru from using that item, for she has no idea as to what power it possesses. All will be lost if she unleashes it in her desperate attempt to save her people,
replied Twilight. I had no doubt Sheik knew the truth, and was purposely dodging my question, so I decided to walk up to her and demand an answer. All of a sudden, she stepped backwards where a sandstorm came out of nowhere, blinding my vision, and when it came back to me, Sheik was gone.
Why did you ask that question?
Asked Spike.
Because her reactions suggest she knows where Twilight is,
I replied.
She did seem to take on a defensive stance which was rather odd,
said Spike.
I was certain Sheik would have told me something, but I guess I pushed too far with my curiosity. There's nothing else that can be done about it now, as who knows where she has gone. We must go back to the Temple of Time, and return the Master Sword to its resting place. It's going to be weird coming back here in my younger days, but it's what I need to do if I'm going to figure out what happened here 7 years ago,
I said.
Do you remember the Prelude of Light?
Asked Spike.
Vaguely, as I only ever played it once,
I replied.
Good thing I wrote down all of the songs in case you forgot them,
said Spike. He then showed me how the prelude of light was meant to be performed, and I played it where I warped away from the desert in a bright yellow light. The moment I disappeared, Sheik reappeared on top of the statue, and she wasn't alone as someone else was there with her. The same person I saw flying across the sky as I was learning the Requiem of Spirit.
That was too close for comfort,
said Twilight.
You struggled a little bit there trying to answer her questions, but you managed to maintain your identity,
said Flash Sentry.
She suddenly blurted it out of the blue, and it shocked me as I wasn't expecting her to bring it up. Still, I wonder why Impa told her that I was still alive? She insisted that I remained dead until the proper time had come, but she also said that she wouldn't let her on to knowing the truth,
said Twilight.
My guess is Sunset Shimmer has progressed much faster than expected, so Impa felt she needed to know something about where you have been. I know that she didn't reveal too much, for the Sheikah keep their secrets close to their chests, which means she is completely unaware. This must remain as such until the final sage has been awakened,
said Flash Sentry.
I just feel bad that I've deceived her all this time,
said Twilight.
It was necessary to do so because you still need to avoid him until all of the sages are awakened,
said Flash Sentry.
Still, she should have been included in the plan instead of simply running around thinking that something else altogether is happening,
said Twilight.
I'll admit that this plan of Impa's wasn't exactly what I would call fair to Sunset Shimmer, but she needed to be kept in the dark, otherwise she would have insisted on keeping you safe. Also, you know that Ganondorf has been searching for you because you possess one of the two powers which he needs to fully conquer Hyrule,
said Flash Sentry.
Do you suppose he knows that she has the other power?
asked Twilight.
Most likely, which is why his servants are going all out to kill her, for he knows that she doesn't need to be alive in order to claim what she possesses. We're fortunate then that he doesn't know where you've been for the past 7 years, and you need to maintain your disguise even if it means Sunset Shimmer having to face the evil king on her own with the Master Sword,
replied Flash Sentry.
No, I would prefer to make myself known to her,
said Twilight.
That is out of the question,
said Flash Sentry.
I know,
sighed Twilight.
You must keep up this deception until Ganondorf has been defeated, for I am sure that she will accomplish the task. She has certainly become a lot stronger since returning from the Sacred Realm, and all of the hardships she has experienced has definitely given her a better understanding of this world. I know you're surprised at how I knew of what your attendant had done to keep you safe, yet it wasn't too difficult for me to figure it out, but back to the subject of Sunset Shimmer. It's amazing how she has turned even the worst of situations around on a mere whim just by acting in a manner no one expects, and now she is on the verge of fulfilling her destiny. It makes me happy knowing I got to see it to begin with,
said Flash Sentry.
Just who are you supposed to be?
asked Twilight.
Some say that I am an ancient sage, while others have claimed I am something else altogether, but the truth is that I have long forgotten what my purpose is meant to be. I merely fly around this world because I wish to see what it has to offer. That is all I can really say, but know that I wish to see peace return to Hyrule. I must go now, for I don't have much time left in this world, which is most unfortunate, but my chosen path reduced my life force, which means this will be the last time anyone gets to see me. I have no regrets about my actions though, for I had to do what was necessary to ensure that Sunset Shimmer fulfills her destiny, and become the hero she was meant to be. Remember what I said to you about keeping your identity a secret?
replied Flash Sentry.
Yes, I'll keep it under wraps,
said Twilight.
Then this is farewell, your highness,
said Flash Sentry. As he urged his mount to take to the skies, he soon disappeared into the distance, leaving Sheik to ponder over what he had told her to do, yet deep down she had no intention of keeping that promise. That's because she had her fingers crossed behind her back. I suppose that he wanted to keep her safe in his own unique fashion, but she wasn't going to have any of it.
I'm sorry, ancient sage, but I must reveal my true self to Sunset Shimmer, for she will need my final power to succeed,
said Twilight. To be continued. Chapter 57, The Lone Wolf Thief.